That's strangely close to Daniel Jones from the Giants. Daniel, is that you? Beat the Chiefs. Show me. If the Broncos and Russell Wilson can show me that they can beat the Chiefs, then I will start believing.
The crowd up. And so are this defense, and Kansas City won't snap the ball again. The Denver Broncos have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs.
David Montgomery on the Lions, former Bear, gonna make this his revenge game for sure. David Montgomery gets the touchdown that ices the game. No! And there's the flag. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. Snap, hold, kick.
Denver wins! Denver wins! Let's go!
They open! No!
What happened? Oh, shit.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the only football podcast. Tonight, we're going to take a deep dive into the AFC South. We're going to give you guys our division winners for the 2024 season. Who's going to go to the playoffs? Who's going to have that division top spot? We're also going to talk about some coaches who maybe early on into the season, we're going to talk about how much leash they got, whether they're going to be on the hot seat immediately, their roster, how that's built, how that's going to affect their season. And then we're going to touch on some NFL news on the back end. Either way, super awesome episode. And of course, we're going to end it off with the Chives with Kyle. Oh, let's get it. America is football. Football is America.
Football is America. And if you don't like it, you can kiss your candy ass.
For the moment in time, I don't give a damn.
Oh my God! No!
You love this.
30 to 27.
Oh!
Chiefs win. Chiefs win 30 to 20.
Woo! Oh, let's
gentlemen.
go.
Welcome to the Only Football Podcast. My name's Kyle, and that's Rick.
I'm Rick. That's Kyle.
And as you can see from the comment, I do want to start this off. We didn't plan this, but rest in peace to Kyrie Jackson. I mean, an absolute devastating situation. And
Absolutely.
man, it's so sad when you see somebody lose their life before it really begins. And this is somebody that was a rookie that was just drafted, that was going to make a name for himself and at the next level, and gets in a car accident. And him, not just him, but I believe 4 others. I don't have the story in front of me, so forgive me for not getting it exactly right. But Kyrie Jackson, I believe, was the only Minnesota Viking player that was injured. He was with his high school buddies, I believe, that he played high school with, and those guys played college in different. They played college ball just in different colleges, and they were kind of getting together and hanging out. And somebody was driving, and they kind of rode them off the highway, and then they were the ones that crashed and died. And it seems like that happens too much, where the person at fault is a person that lives, and it's innocent people that lose their lives. So it was just a devastating situation. Did you hear about that?
I did, man. And it was really sad because, like you said, he had just finished his rookie season, 24 years old. Like you said, it's such a terrible thing when that happens. And especially when I believe it was a drunk driver that happened. And in this day and age, with apps, with car share services or ride share services, like, are you not doing that? Like, how expensive is it? Like, I get it. Surge prices suck, but not suck to the point where, I'm going to drive tonight drunk. Yeah. It's dumb. It's you shouldn't have to do that. It's a loss of life that you just can never get back. And it's one of the biggest mistakes you can make of your life. And unfortunately, this had to happen to such a young guy who had a lot of promise. And again, super young.
Yeah, and I can tell you the way you're totally right in having reason and logic. I mean, it's a part of maturity is that even when you're inebriated, you still have a part of you that is telling you what the right thing to do is, and you're able to do it. That's called being able to
Yeah.
be an adult and handle your drinks. But
Hmm.
obviously, this guy that was driving is much worse than that because we know that he wasn't just trying to get home, but he was driving 100 and something miles an hour on the highway. So that's not like, oh, I shouldn't be driving, but I'm just going to try to follow the rules, not condoning that. But this
Yeah.
was a totally different thing where it's like, oh, I'm in a race. And
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of goes back to what happened with the Raiders wide receiver. It's like, what are you doing? So, but real quick on that note, I'm going to get out of here
yeah,
for just a few seconds, going to restart my Wi-Fi so you guys don't have such a shitty image of me. So I will be right back.
there's no
Kyle,
such
hold it down.
there's
What'd you
no
say?
such thing. There's no such thing as a shitty image of you. But yeah, like Rick said, we're gonna be talking about the AFC South today, and I'm really
Okay.
excited about it because, as you know, when the trade happened for Stephon Diggs, I went on my Twitter, and the first thing I did was I posted the Texans are going to the Super Bowl. And I've talked about it quite a lot this offseason. I was just talking about it on my personal channel just the other day when I was discussing that I think the Texans have the best wide receiver core in the NFL. I actually had the Bears and the Texans at 1A and 1B, given the slight edge to the Houston Texans because of the quarterback play from CJ
Here
Stroud.
we go.
But we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the Titans, which I'm really excited to because there is always that one team that you were like, no way. Well, I think that you could make a legitimate case that the Tennessee Titans could have the kind of year this year that the Texans had last year. Now, not
Oh,
to the extent because I don't think Will Levis becomes CJ Stroud, but maybe he gets like in maybe he's playing tier 2 football. He did throw 4 touchdown passes his debut.
mhm.
He did have a terrible offensive line. They had no offense. DeAndre Hopkins was kind of over his skis. He was the whole offense. Derrick Henry was having a down year because of the offensive line, and Will Levis didn't even get all of the practice reps during the offseason. They just kind of threw him into the fire, and he beat the Dolphins and threw 4 touchdown passes. And
Yeah.
then the season kind of is over before it really begins. So now he gets a whole offseason. And I think when you revisit looking on this side of the offseason, looking back, I think you see as a whole that they didn't make just like that 1 or 2 moves, but collectively they built a roster through free agency
They
and the
did.
draft.
Mhm.
And they got a new coach, and the new coach is somebody that knows how to take a young quarterback and make him successful. Joe Burrow's quarterback coach or offensive coordinator. And we know that the Bengals have had a good Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Like they've had that offense rolling when they're all healthy. So they're moving philosophies. They bring in Tony Pollard. We're going to talk about it,
Yep.
but the Titans are no longer a team that we have to be bored. We're talking about the AFC South. Texans, awesome. Jags, awesome. Titans, not anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah.
The real slumber of the division.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't even know if who would you say if you had to say who's the joke of this division?
God, honestly, there is no joke of this division. There is no, let's call it, I don't know, last year or the year prior. There's no Bears of this division, right? The last couple seasons or so. There's no Bears of this division. There's no um, Arizona Cardinals. There's nothing like that. Because I really do think that all of these teams have a really good shot. Like, obviously, we say that during the offseason. There's so many storylines, there's so many trades, offseason transactions, draft things that happen that give, every team, Colts, Titans, Texans, and Jags fans, like that promise. So really, there is no like, oh, they're definitely coming in last, because this one was really hard for me to kind of predict the winners, 1 through 4, who's going to win, who's going to come in last, because this is a tough one. Like you mentioned with the Titans, for example, I feel like a lot of people are already, casting them off. And yes, they're in a division with the Jags and with the Texans, so it already does make it tough. You also got to look at the Colts and what they did last year with Gardner Minshew, and now their second-year quarterback coming back in Richardson. But the Titans have a second-year quarterback themselves, Will Levis, who you just mentioned, threw 4 touchdowns against the Dolphins last season in his basically like welcome to the NFL game. And they brought in Tony Pollard. They brought in Calvin Ridley. They are building around him and this new offense with their brand new head coach. There's a lot of things that you're looking at where you're just like, these are good moves. Like, I wish my team made these moves, right? Like every other NFL fan is looking at this and being like, damn, those are some good chess moves that they're making to, 1, give stuff to their young quarterback, 2, their entire offensive scheme and team I don't know, swag, I guess you would call it.
Yeah,
it's just all of that. Yeah, the culture. Thank you. All of these things, they're good moves. So whether they don't work out this year, for the future, I think they're already setting like a what do you call it? A base for what is going to springboard them into competition the next few years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. But I think the way that I did this when I was writing it out is what I felt like the best way to do is kind of go through position groups and rank them, and then kind of at the end do an all-encompassing, okay, based on all of these. And I thought the most fun position is wide receiver and tight end, your weapons.
Yeah.
So looking at the weapons, I think you got to go easy, right? This is not a debate. The Houston Texans have not only the best weapons in their division, but the NFL, and I will take that confidently. I will say that they have Stephon Diggs, who is now the 3rd best wide receiver on the team, or the 2nd best wide receiver on the team. I really think Nico Collins is going to be the wide receiver 1. Tank Dell was the one before Nico Collins had an opportunity to prove that he was the one. And then Stephon Diggs has been arguably the best receiver in the last 5 years. And then they have key depth in Noah Brown, Robert Woods, who is played a huge role in the Rams' success when they won the Super Bowl. And actually, a guy my brother went to high school with, his little brother, Xavier Hutchinson, who they drafted last year. So, I mean, it's important to have depth. It's one thing to have Diggs and Collins and Dell, but we know that it's hard to keep receivers healthy. Dell was injured last year. If one of these guys goes down, there's plenty of guys that are available to kind of fill that role in some capacity. I do think Nico Collins, though, is the clear wide receiver 1. But when you look at the other teams, surprisingly enough, I have the Tennessee Titans at number 2. They got Tyler Boyd. Okay. Tyler Boyd was my favorite wide receiver. My favorite wide receiver 3 in the NFL. He played a huge role for the Bengals, and they will miss him this year. But Calvin Ridley never really showed up the way he was supposed to in Jacksonville. This is year 2 from being back. It's always that second year that they kind of get back into gear, and DeAndre Hopkins is still playing elite. This is a good 3 wide receiver lineup, and they still have Treylon Burks, who they drafted confident that he would fill A.J. Brown's role, which looking back on it is a stupid, dumb decision. But Treylon Burke still, like, if you're in the building, you still have faith that Treylon Burks hasn't become what he was drafted to be, and that he can still become that. So I'm not going to give you 3 and 4. I'm just going to give you 1 and 2. I think the Texans best weapons, but surprisingly enough, the Tennessee Titans at number 2.
Yeah, and Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd. I mean, that right there, again, the Calvin Ridley thing last season with the Jaguars, again, didn't fulfill its promise. But like you said, the Texans, man, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Tank Dell was the one who got injured, right? Because he's the one that had
he broke his leg.
Yeah. So he had like 47 targets, I think 700 or so yards, something like that. And that was in limited games. So you put that, you pair up Tank Dell with Nico Collins, and then you add Stephon Diggs, and they still have Dalton Schultz at tight end. Yeah, dude, like the weapons there are crazy. The receiving weapons there are crazy. I have to agree. I am going to take the Tennessee Titans at second here with those wide receivers, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyler Boyd. Like you said, Tyler Boyd, very low key wide receiver 3. Like I think he can have a breakout, depending on how Calvin Ridley does. Because DeAndre Hopkins is going to produce no matter what. And, obviously we're saying this again during the offseason, but just on past performances with the Texans and with the Cardinals, DeAndre Hopkins, and even last year, he produces, man. So yeah. I totally agree there. And then third, third, it's kind of a toss-up, although I would rather take Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. over the Colts, Pittman, Downs, and Adonai Mitchell. Adonai Mitchell and Josh Downs, both guys that like you saw last season that were like, oh, that looks good. But Brian Thomas Jr., rookie, like wide receiver sensation. Gabe Davis has shown what he can do in Buffalo. And of course, Christian Kirk reset the wide receiver market one year. And we're like, what the fuck? Going to be that number one for Trevor Lawrence, and is going to be his number one for a while. So, I'm going to have to put the Jacksonville Jaguars third, followed by the Colts. But Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell, they might surprise, man.
Yeah, I could see that. So much so that I actually have the Colts at 3. Ooh. And I feel really good about the Jags. If you're a Jags fan, this doesn't mean that the Jags aren't a playoff team. It just means this is where the receivers rank. I mean, I look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then I look at the division, and I go, okay, so every team has a guy. The Titans have Calvin Ridley. The Texans have whoever you want to say their number one is. You can pick 3. And then the Colts have Pittman Jr. I like Christian Kirk, but personally, I don't think he's even a top 5 receiver in the AFC South right now. And he's the number one. I think that's a massive problem. But I think that Trevor Lawrence has the ability to overcome that. I don't think that Christian Kirk is some kind of scrub or a jag or anything like that. I think that Trevor Lawrence will be fine, but I have a hard time putting the Jaguars at number 3 when I think Michael Pittman has proven to be a better wide receiver than anybody that the Jaguars have. Adonai Mitchell, sure. I mean, he's young, but like the Colts knew that they needed to lock up Michael Pittman. They did it with that 3-year contract, and I think he's going to be the leader in the wide receiver room. If you're going to draft a bunch of young talent, like they use their second-round pick on Adonai Mitchell, you're going to want to have some kind of veteran leadership in the room. Alec Pierce is in his 3rd year. So still outside of Michael Pittman, there's not a ton of veteran leadership on this team. But I still think that Pittman puts this team at 3, and then I do have the Jags at 4. I think Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas, like on paper, Brian Thomas's name looks good because he went to LSU, and LSU wide receivers really pan out, and we know that. But this isn't an LSU wide receiver that was drafted in the top 10 or the top 15. So we have to remember to separate him from guys like Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors. But it's hard because he's wearing that uniform, and he's a wide receiver, and he was drafted in the 1st round. But all in all, you and I pretty much agree on everything. Just have 3 and 4 swapped out. And then the top 5 wide receivers in the AFC South, I'm going to go Diggs, number 1. I'm going to go Nico Collins, number 2. Michael Pittman Jr. at 3. And then I'm going to do Calvin Ridley at 4 and DeAndre Hopkins 5. I do think that it's possible.
Okay. Joe, keep going.
I do think that it's possible for Calvin Ridley to work his way up the list, especially if he gets back into his regular form. But Michael Pittman Jr., don't forget, he's been nothing but consistent since he got into the NFL. And the Colts have been nothing but inconsistent at the quarterback position. I always pay attention to that. When guys like Terry McLaurin have success in Washington, and it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is, the wide receiver gets 1,000 yards regardless. Those things matter a lot to me. And I do think that they're going to have better quarterback play this year, the Colts, with Anthony Richardson healthy. I expect Michael Pittman Jr. just got paid. He's going to have a big year. I know that he's been around now, and the Colts aren't a super exciting team. So, the stars really get the shit end of the stick. Whenever your team isn't really sexy or Super Bowl contender, we kind of take their stars and we just put them in this whatever category. But Michael Pittman Jr., I think, belongs to be in the top 10, top 15 wide receivers, in the league for sure. But he's just not getting that kind of attention because the Colts haven't done anything lately. So I know it seems like a jump, but I just expect a big season out of Michael Pittman. And then Calvin Ridley, I expect to bounce back. So he makes the list. Nico Collins, I can't say enough about him. I think it's possible that we look at by the end of the season, Nico Collins has more receiving yards than any of these wide receivers on the list.
Wow.
Just what he showed in the playoffs was absolutely insane. The way he torched the Browns defense in the playoff game. They had him double covered and he still flew right past everybody. He catches the ball. He doesn't choke. He's a great route runner. And he should have been drafted probably closer to the second or first round than the third round. And the Texans look really smart. And I just want to say this too, because good job, Texans, for capitalizing on what you saw from CJ Stroud last year, because you saw a guy come out and almost shatter all these records. And you have a window now. You have a window where you don't have to pay your quarterback, and you did the right thing. You signed Stephon Diggs. You brought in these guys that you weren't shy in free agency. And it's crazy to say this when last year we thought the Texans were a 4 or 5 win team, but they're loading up for a Super Bowl. And if you're a Texans fan, you probably do feel like it's AFC Championship or bust type of.
Oh yeah.
And you can feel it. And it's crazy how fast that happened, So how would you rank the top 5 receivers out of this division? Because I know at some point you were like, oh,
yeah. How was I? So I think so. My thing is here, I'm gonna go Stephon Diggs number 1, 2. I mean, he was clearly a playmaker in Minnesota. They traded him to the Bills, and he became even more of a playmaker. Yes, he came with his issues. Give me the ball more, this, that. It was like a lot of attitude issues, it seemed like, right? But he's still clearly a number 1 wide receiver, and he's getting paid like it too. That being said, he's got my number 1. My number 2 is actually going to be DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins has been very, very consistent as well. And that's that he moved from the Texans to the Cardinals and now in the Tennessee Titans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons out of his 10 seasons over 1,000 yards. And he's got 78 total touchdowns. So, for me, that right there is damn good consistency, a good touchdown count. And again, with the Cardinals, with the limited amount of offense, I would say, right? And especially with Kyler getting hurt and just a bunch of shit going on there, he still stayed consistent with them. And of course, he had his time with the Texans and Deshaun Watson, but now he gets a very young quarterback. And even last season, over 1,000 yards, 75 receptions, 7 touchdowns. Even with a rookie quarterback, he was still doing that. You know what I mean? So DeAndre Hopkins, my number 2. My number 3, I think I got to go with Pittman. I really do think I got to go with Pittman here. 2 out of the 4 seasons, over 1,000 yards, 15 touchdowns. Not great. Don't love that. But also he had Gardner Minshew and a rookie quarterback throwing him the ball last season, right? So we got to take that into account, I think, for his touchdown grabbing ability. So that's 3. At number 4, I think that's when I got to put in Nico Collins. Nico Collins is just, again, what they did last season. What he did last season with the Texans was just awesome. Almost 1,300 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns. Yeah, get ready. Loading, right? 2024 season loading.
Yeah, because you guys are going to be shocked. I'm telling you. He was only the 3rd player in Texans franchise history to have 1,200 receiving yards in a season.
Ooh,
and that's
Jesus Christ.
He averaged the 2nd most yards per route in the NFL last season. And he just started playing with CJ Stroud. I understand people that want to see a little bit more before they put him higher on their list. And maybe I am trying to predict this a little bit, to be fair. Because I am trying to guess the season, right? It's not necessarily like what they're at right now. It's like, no, I think when we look back on this podcast, week 6, Nico Collins is going to be a bona fide star in the league, and we're going to be like, damn, I can't believe I had DeAndre Hopkins over Nico Collins. But I can understand it because DeAndre Hopkins has been one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in the NFL, for at least the past 7 years, 6 years.
He's been up there.
Definitely had the best hands in the league, made just crazy good catches. But it does, to me, feel like there's a younger generation rising up, and Nico Collins is that younger generation.
Definitely. And I could see that too. That's why I got him at 4. And then at 5, I'm really torn. I don't want to say really torn, but Calvin Ridley or Tyler Boyd. I just don't know who to put there. And I feel like Calvin Ridley, because of what he has done, is number 5. And Tyler Boyd, I just have ever since you and I started this podcast and you were like, Tyler Boyd. And I've been like,
that's true.
Ooh, Tyler Boyd. That's a name. And he is consistent. And he's just a low key guy. That's kind of why I have him there. But again, with what Calvin Ridley has done prior to, his not so good season with the Jaguars, he still amassed over 1,000 yards receiving, by the way. But it just wasn't. It was like in spurts. So I'm gonna put Calvin Ridley above him there to round out the top 5. But yeah, man, I got Stephon Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins, those vets there, with that added Nico Collins, year 4, this upcoming season. Those are my top 5 right there, man. I think it's going to be an awesome receiving season for all 4 of these teams.
Okay. Moving to tight end, I'm going to put the Jags at number 1 with Evan Ingram. Okay. I think Evan Ingram is the best tight end in this division. He's coming off a Pro Bowl season. He had 114 catches. Yeah. Rick, he almost had 1,000 yards last year. He had 963 yards and 4 touchdowns. The guy's a true weapon. He's the one player that you could really make an argument that he deserves an extension. One of the core people you have to pay, and you're seeing that teams are doing this. Like CJ Stroud, they just signed Schultz, right? They're like a quarterback needs a tight end. They let Tyreek Hill go, but they kept Travis Kelce. The tight end is such an important position. It's Bill's favorite position. His favorite player ever is Jeremy Shockley. I can understand that because sometimes they are the unsung heroes. You look at the best teams and they all have a good tight end. That Philly's been pretty good. They have Goddard. You got the Travis Kelce, who's been great. Of course, George Kittle and the 49ers. And Brock Purdy, how much did he need that? I mean, the tight end position is just so important. And that's why I think this is a really important one to do outside of wide receivers, because I was doing something last week where I was ranking the best wide receiver cast 1 through 32 in the NFL. And the writer on PFF that did it, he grouped the tight end in with the wide receivers. And I didn't like that because tight ends are not wide receivers. So I wanted to do that separate. But yeah, man, I got to go with Evan Ingram at number 1. The Jags also used a second round pick in 2022 on Brenton Strange. So they believe that he can be a player, in the future. And then at number 2, I have the Texans with Dalton Schultz. The Dalton Schultz had 635 yards last season, 59 catches, 5 touchdowns. He has proven to be a reliable target for CJ Stroud, and he's I think it's safe to say he's the second best tight end behind Ingram. And then at 3 for the Colts, it's a kind of a tough one because Kylan Granson, I mean, the name isn't a household name, right? But he's their top. He's their top player, and he's the most consistent, contributor from the tight end room. It's Kylan Granson, and behind them, it's a lot of guys that you kind of know, maybe Mo Alley Cox. I know that rings a bell.
Yeah.
But the other 3 really don't. And then at 5.
Say it.
Chigozumi.
This is gonna be a fucking.
Yeah. He finished last
that
season.
That was a vocabulary Olympics.
That was. That's the spelling bee finals. So he finished last season with 54 catches, 528 yards, 1 touchdown. The gap between this is the thing. The gap between the 3rd best tight end and the 5th best tight end, I think, is very small. I think once we get to 3, we start getting pretty much the same caliber type of player, if that makes sense. I think 1 and 2 are, it's like Evan Ingram's up here, Dalton Schultz is here, but then you got 3, 4, 5. It's take your pick. I really don't think that any of them 3 through 5 is gonna make you could make a case for any of them. But I just don't think you're too excited about any of those 3. But those are the guys they're rolling with. Who do you got?
I pretty much have to agree with you, and I want to touch on this comment with Bill. He said he's only good there. In regards to Evan Ingram, he should stay. He couldn't do crap for the Giants. I hope they keep him and take care of him. And that's why he's number 1, because he was the first 5 seasons. He was actually with the Giants, but with the Jags last season, 114 receptions. Just take that into consideration. You still had Calvin Ridley in a pretty much an off season, over 1,000 yards. And then you got Evan Ingram with 114 receptions for a tight end. Those are Kelsey, Kittle, those types of numbers in terms of receptions. So it's clearly that he is the number 1 tight end in this division. So I totally agree with you there. Dalton Schultz is definitely a clear number 2. He didn't have nearly as many receptions. I mean, it's almost half at 59 receptions. He did have 5 touchdowns. They did re-sign him because they said, you know what? We like you enough to bring you back because you were somewhat of, tight ends are looked at as hey, as a quarterback, you're that's my guy who's going to catch it every time 5, 6, 7 yards downfield, past the line of scrimmage.
Safety blanket.
That's kind of safety blanket. Exactly. And that's what he was for CJ Stroud. And they liked him enough. He had a couple good seasons in Dallas. And now if he can continue to just be as successful as he was last season and build those numbers up, Dallas is going to be kicking themselves because they're fuck, we let go of a good one. I am actually going to go with Chigoziem Okonkwo from the Tennessee Titans. You like that?
Good work.
Yeah, you like that? Yeah. He 54 receptions, 528 yards, only 1 touchdown last season, but already those numbers are much better in comparison to the 3 tight ends that the Indianapolis Colts kind of use. And they're using Jelani Woods. They have him at number 1 in tight end in terms of the depth chart. And last season was his rookie year. He had 40 targets, a little over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So maybe you're going to start to see something like that. Anthony Richardson building that trust with Jelani Woods, young guy at the tight end position. You've already got a wide receiver that's paid. You got a Donnie Mitchell and Josh Downs as well. Let's build that younger connection, like you said. Let's see if we can get Jelani Woods up there. But yeah, I'm gonna put the Colts guys at 4th and Tennessee Titans Okonkwo at 3rd, just because he's more of a consistent producer, and he played all 17 games last season as well. So at the tight end position, definitely Jaguars. I'm definitely going Jaguars there.
Yeah, and it's another one of those where it's like hard to debate anything else. You got the most important position in sports is quarterback, and then you could argue left tackle is the second, or you could say edge rusher. It's becoming really important to have a good edge rushing group on your team to get after the quarterback. So that's what we're going to talk about next. And going through the division, there's quite a few playmakers, and I'll tell you right off the bat, the Jags and Texans I stared at for quite a bit, trying to make sense out of who I would put first. But I mean, I have to go with the Houston Texans. Daniel Hunter comes from Minnesota. Will Anderson Jr. is the defensive rookie of the year. The Texans have made this move knowing that if they could get another guy on the other side of Will Anderson Jr., this is going to be a nightmare for opposing teams.
Yeah.
Who are they going to double team? Daniel Hunter? I mean, Hunter, he's still not even 30 years old. He's coming off arguably the best NFL season he's ever had. So he's, I think, in his prime. It's fair to say that, right? He set career highs in tackles too. He had 83 tackles. I'm seeing now that was the most he ever had in a season, and 23 tackles for a loss and 16 and a half sacks. It's like you add a guy like that to Will Anderson, and this is going to be a really nasty defense, especially knowing too they're coached by a defensive coach in D'Amico Ryans, who's going to have their boys playing really good, disciplined defensive football. I think all in all, the Jags had a case to be at number 1, but I just couldn't. At the end of the day, I just couldn't put them above the Houston Texans.
Yeah, no, I 100% totally agree with that. The thing is, though, with the Houston Texans at number 1, and you're saying Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars, they've got some guys there, right? Arik Armstead and Josh Hines Allen. Now we have to say Josh Hines Allen, not Josh Allen anymore. That's what he's going by, Josh Hines Allen. He changed the. It's not only is it on the depth chart, but it's on I think like NFL or ESPN. So he's going to go by Josh Hines Allen. That's what's going to be on the back of his jersey, Hines Allen, instead of just going by Josh Allen. And he said it's a for his family, just like as an honoring his family name and things like that.
Yeah.
So
because they keep
cool.
Googling Josh Allen and getting a Buffalo Bills character.
Also that. But the Texans number 1, we cannot forget about the Colts. DeForest Buckner, Samson Ebukam, those guys are absolute menaces. Ebukam with 9.5 sacks last year. So we cannot forget about the Colts. I'm actually going to go Texans, Colts, Jags, and then Titans, because the Titans are like the worst defensive team, especially on the defensive line. Like they've got some players, in other on other sides of this defense, Chidobe Awuzie, L'Jarius Sneed now, but their defensive line not really that good. A lot of bad numbers last season. One thing that they wanted to improve this year was their defensive line, and they brought in Tavondre Sweat through the draft. So Tennessee Titans are going to be the worst until they prove that they're better than at least the Jaguars. But I think in terms of like the line ferocity, just what the numbers have said from last season, you got to go Texans and Colts, man. DeForest Buckner again and Ibukum there with the Colts, going to be a menace continually. And then Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr., Aziz Al-Shair, Derek Stingley Jr., Jeff Okuda. I mean, he's not great, but he's been pretty good.
Did you say Derek Stingley?
Stingley Jr., yeah, with the Texans.
He's a corner.
Yeah. I was just talking about the defense and the guys in general. Okay. Yeah. But no, he's a defensive end at 200 pounds. But these guys, yeah, absolutely. The Houston Texans are going to absolutely destroy competition on the defensive side. And you said it yourself, D'Amico Ryans, defensive-minded guy. So he's going to have these guys ready to play. You add in Danielle Hunter. And it's just a recipe for disaster for the quarterbacks on the other side.
Yeah, if Anderson takes the expected sophomore leap, then the rest of the AFC South is going to have their hands full. At number 2, I have the Jags with Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker,
Josh Hines Allen.
What?
Josh Hines Allen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Say it right.
I didn't mean to do that. It's going to take some time. So the Jags, though, do come in at number 2 because there's been I forgot who it was, but there was a player. I think it was Trevor Lawrence who said they just brought in. Who did they bring in through free agency? You were just talking about him.
For the Jaguars?
Yeah.
I believe it was Arik Armstead.
Okay.
Yeah, from the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. So he just said, I think it was about a month ago in an interview, that he thinks Trayvon Walker could be as good as Nick Bosa. So keep in mind, when the Jags had that year with Stinky Finger and they got the first overall pick, they didn't need a quarterback. They actually had the first overall pick twice in a row, and the best player in the 2022 draft was Trayvon Walker, and it wasn't even close. And everybody knew that he was going to be drafted number 1, but he hasn't really just popped off the scene like Will Anderson Jr. has, or some other guys that do really well. But neither did Von Miller his rookie year. Keep in mind that some players take a couple years to get going. The game is really fast. But when you have a guy like Arik Armstead, who's been playing in a San Francisco-style defense, and he says, hey, I'm not just saying this. Like, the guy, I'm watching Trayvon Walker practice. I'm watching him. I'm with him every day. And he has all of the tools that he has, the whole makeup of what Nick Bosa is, or these Hall of Fame type edge rushers. And Josh Hines Allen is already one of the best in the league. So the reason he's at number 2 is because Trayvon Walker, although the potential is there, he isn't there yet. But if Trayvon Walker gets to the level that Arik Armstead is saying, this is going to be the best pass rush duo in the NFL with Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. The question is, does Trayvon Walker take that step, or is Arik Armstead just being a good teammate and boosting his ego a little bit? And then at 3, I have the Colts. Like the rest of the AFC South has their alpha in the edge room. The Colts just have a lot of productive players. Latu was drafted to be the guy. They took the step of drafting somebody that potentially is going to be that alpha in Latu. 15th overall, I think only like the second defensive player drafted maybe. Now, if he can hit the road running quicker than the typical rookie pass rusher, then that's going to be what's best for the Colts defense. But he is expected to be the guy on this defense. And then you just have really good productive players alongside of him. And then at 4, Tennessee Titans. I mean, Harold Landry III, Arden Key. I know Arden Key, but Rashad Weaver, Jalen Harrell. There's not really much to talk about. I mean, there was a slow start to the year for Harold Landry in 2021. But he did have 12 sacks in 2021. We got to put a little respect on his name. He did have that season, but he hasn't had that season, a season like that since 2021. So I think for the Colts, there's a lot of areas that they're good at, or the Titans. There's a lot of areas that they're high on the list, but edge rusher is definitely not it. They're the last in the division, and you had the Titans at 4 as well, right? You did.
I did, and again, yep.
Okay. So, and then
sorry if I keep cutting out.
Oh, it's okay. Oh, am I cutting out?
I don't know if it's me or if it's you. Somebody could give us
give
us a hand here, because I
intel in the chat. My top 5 edge rushers, I got Josh Allen 1, Daniel Hunter 2, Will Anderson 3, Harold Landry or Trayvon Walker 4, Harold Landry 5.
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. So I got Josh Allen 1, Daniel Hunter.
Okay.
Daniel Hunter 2, Will Anderson Jr. 3, Trayvon Walker 4, Harold Landry 5.
Yeah. Man. God, I don't see anything wrong with that list right there. That's the thing. Like, I don't think I can give you any different answer without being like, yeah, you know what? You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that I can justify changing that with. So I'm going to have to agree with that. Yeah.
Fair enough. So the next group is going to be defensive tackles. And I think this is the part of the show where Jinja is going to be the most happy. When I went to the combine in Indianapolis, I did realize that there were a lot of Colts fans there for obvious reasons, and they were all wearing a common jersey in DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner is their guy. He's their stud. And 1 and 2 is close between the Colts and Titans. When we'll talk about the Titans in a little bit, but DeForest Buckner is probably the best overall defensive tackle in the AFC South altogether. And that's going to probably give you the edge when you have a guy like that. He ended last season with 8 sacks, and he was double teamed more than not because the Colts didn't have an elite pass rusher on the other side to take the pressure off of him. But drafting Latu in the first round this year is a really big step towards getting that to take that pressure off of him. So I'm expecting Buckner to get more opportunities this season than he has had, and he's already proven that he's the best in this division. So it's actually kind of scary to think what kind of season DeForest Buckner can have. And that's why I have the Colts at 1. At 2, I got the Tennessee Titans. Like I said, they got Tavondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons, Sebastian Joseph Day, Marlon Davidson, and Keandre Corbin. Jeffrey Simmons is the elite tight end in this room. The margin between Simmons and Buckner, people think is pretty thin. So Jeffrey Simmons is not a name that a lot of people know, but I just talked about this. When you're on a team that doesn't win, the stars don't really get that kind of credit. But Jeffrey Simmons has been a really, really important guy for Tennessee. And you could make an argument that him and DeForest Buckner are neck and neck. So the reason that they fall to 2 instead of 1 for me, though, is that I give the Colts the clear edge behind Buckner, Simmons, Stewart, who is, to me, the better player compared to Sebastian Joseph Day, who's the second defensive tackle for the Tennessee Titans. And the off-the-field issues with Tavondre Sweat make me think that Davis is a more reliable backup. So I got the Tennessee Titans at number 2, and then at 3, the Houston Texans. Probably no names that you know. Another big free agency signing by the Texans was when they signed Colts defensive tackle Danico Autry. Autry finished last season with 11.5 sacks, and he spent time off the edge in the interior. So in Houston, he's going to probably see the majority of his snaps inside, and I think the Texans have a lot of spots position group wise where they are some of the best groups in the NFL, but defensive tackle, I don't really think it's one of them. I don't think that they look at this position group and say, we can't go to battle with them. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Mhm.
It's just not the bright spot of the team. And then I give Jacksonville Jaguars the fourth best
Yep.
defensive tackle group. The Jaguars, they have some work to do. So they have Eric Armstead, who we were just talking about, Devon Hamilton, Mason Smith, Jordan Jefferson, and Adam Giotis. And I remember
Let's go.
he was with the Broncos for a little bit. But yes, Eric Armstead, he's going to be a huge help. I really think he's going to play a big role. He's 30 years old, and he was released by the 49ers only when they couldn't come to an agreement on their contract. It's possible that the 49ers didn't want to let him go, but he's been really impactful in the passing game and the rushing game for the 49ers. I expect him to bring that productivity to the Jacksonville Jaguars immediately. And besides that, though, it's not anything to write home about. Jags come in at number 4. They shocked a lot of people when they selected Mason Smith in the second round. Because he's a very raw prospect. I remember people saying that he was probably it was probably a reach for the Jaguars to draft him in the second round. So the fact that they reach for him, you'd expect that they'll find a way to make sure that he sees the field this season. But if he is a raw talent that needs to develop, that might not be a good thing for him. Jags got some work to do at defensive tackle, so Jags at 4.
Okay. Yeah, easily the Colts with DeForest Buckner, easy number 1. That's just, I feel like across the NFL, if anybody else is looking at this division and being like, oh, who are the defensive tackles? You're going DeForest Buckner number 1. So that's kind of easy. The Indianapolis Colts, real lucky with him coming up the middle to your quarterback. What I will say for my second is I'll actually go Houston Texans.
Wow.
Now with Denico Autry, Denico Autry was actually in the Titans last season, had 11 and a half sacks, 50 total tackles as a tackle, a defensive tackle. So I'm actually going to go with Texans third there based off Autry. And he's actually bounced around the AFC South. Like you said, he was on the Colts and now he was on the Titans. Now he's on the Texans. He actually started off his career with Oakland. So obviously not a lot going on there. He only had about, 7-11 sacks in 4 years. So
7-11. 7. Today was a good day.
Kyle just had an autistic moment.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'm going with the Texans too, with the addition of Autry. And then it's kind of like fuzzy there, right? Because the Jaguars, Devon Hamilton, not really a lot going on there, but also the Tennessee Titans are kind of reaching with Devondre Sweat. Like there's a lot of potential there. And I'm not saying they reached in terms of draft pick. I'm just saying there's reach there with like giving them any sort of credit in terms of being a force on the defensive line, because there's potential there with Devondre Sweat. I'm just going to have to go with a guy who's actually been in the league, Devon Hamilton, Jordan Jefferson, Arik Armstead with the Jaguars there. Obviously, like you said, I think so too. I think Arik Armstead is going to make that defensive line much better for the Jaguars. And I'm going to put the Titans actually last with the potential of a better defensive line. So I'm going Colts, Texans, Jaguars, and Titans. Again, I like the youngness that the Titans are doing, even on the offense, or I'm sorry, on the defensive side as well. But yeah, I'm going to give the edge to the Jaguars here, but I don't think like anything outside of the Colts or the Texans is going to be astounding anybody, with the Jags and the Titans on the defensive line.
Yeah. And my top 5, I got DeForest Buckner 1, Jeffrey Simmons 2, Denico Autry 3, Eric Armstead 4, and Grover Stewart at 5.
Okay, DeForest Buckner 1, absolutely. I'm actually gonna go. I'm going to go Autry 2, Armstead 3. Who else did you have in your top 5? I was just looking here.
So
Grover
Autry,
Stewart.
Yep. So I had Autry at number 3, and then Eric Armstead, who came from the 49ers, at 4, and then Grover Stewart at 5.
Yeah. I'm going to put Grover Stewart at 4. And then it's not a lot to go off of, guys. Give me a second here.
It's okay.
No, I'm just fucking around. Fuck it. I'll put Devondre Sweat there just for the potential, just because I like the name. I like what he did. So I'm gonna put him 5.
All right. So now we move into the linebackers, or not the linebackers, the defensive tackle. No, the linebackers.
No, we did that one.
So we just did defensive tackle. So we went edge, defensive tackle, and now we're going to do linebackers. And linebackers wasn't too hard for me. When I went through the linebackers, I put the Colts at number 1 immediately. Okay. So before having to miss time from his injury last year, Franklin was on pace to lead the NFL in tackles, but he was also on a historical pace. So Franklin becomes the captain of the Colts defense. He develops into one of the best linebackers in the NFL in terms of stopping the run. And this is the kicker, though. That's not all. The Colts also have EJ Speed, who was kind of thrown into the starting lineup. He was thrown into the starting lineup after the team chose to part ways with Shaquille Leonard. And a lot of times, I say this a lot of times when you have a player as good as Shaquille Leonard and a team decides to part ways, it's not always the money. Sometimes it's the fact that there's a guy on the depth chart that they think can fill that role to the same level that Shaquille Leonard was. Not only did Speed not miss a beat when he took over the job, he actually elevated the position. So Franklin and Speed form probably the best linebacker duo in the AFC South easily. That's where I look at it. And I do think the Colts, this is part of, it's all kind of coming together. Now we're seeing this whole puzzle come together, and the Texans, the Colts, I mean, each team kind of has their area where they own the division in that position group, but there's just not a scrub in this division. And I expect the Colts to be a pretty good defensive team this year, because when you have solid linebackers, it goes a long way, especially a linebacker that can stop the run like that. At number 2, the Houston Texans, and this is funny because this is another position group for the Texans that's led by a free agent signing, just like the one we just did with Daniel Hunter. So they add the Azeez Al-Shiar, former Titans and 49ers linebacker. He's asked to do a bit more than Franklin or Alucon. Jeez, give me an easy name. But okay, I'm just gonna move on. Christian Harris. Dude, this is like that Key and Peele skit where they get the names. Have you seen the names?
Kringle
exactly. But the second best linebacker, or the second linebacker for the Texans, is Christian Harris, and that's an easy name to say. He's coming off a solid second season. He had over 100 tackles last season. There's some questions on how his role might change with Shiar moving all over the field, but I think this is clearly still the second best linebacker group. So I'm going Colts 1, Texans 2, and then at 3, the Jaguars. The Jaguars linebacker room is led by Foyesade Alucon, who proved himself to be one of the best tacklers in the NFL. He led the league in total tackles in 2021 and 2022. That's pretty impressive. It's one thing to lead the NFL in tackles once. He did it back-to-back seasons, and he led the NFL in solo tackles in 2022 and 2023. A solo tackle means that you're able to go up to a player and end the play without any help from your friends, and that is why he's proven himself to be one of the best tacklers in the NFL. So he's got Franklin alongside of him. So those are the two top linebackers on the team. I just haven't seen enough from Devin Lloyd to rank them higher on the list. Yeah. But I got the Jags at 3, and then the Titans come in at 4. The Titans don't really have any proven production right now, so that's why they fall at 4th. I'm intrigued by their signing of Kenneth Murray. If you let Murray be a true run stopper for this team and don't ask him to drop back into coverage, he could be a solid player, but that's still a question mark. I don't know what the Titans are going to ask him to do. They also have Cedric Gray, Jack Gibbons, Otis Reese, and James Williams, as Steve Smith would say, a bunch of Jags. But rookie Cedric Gray's got plenty of things that you like from his college tape. That's why he was drafted. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a day one starter as a rookie, but there's just nothing to go off of here. There's no data. So the Titans come in at number 4.
Yeah, the Titans are like a little interesting because, again, with Kenneth Murray, right? Like last year with the Chargers, he played 15 games at 107 total tackles, 79 solos, which is huge for a linebacker. You want your linebackers to amass over 100 tackles. Like that, I feel like that's just standard for the linebacker position, and especially for like your more, I guess, your alpha, your captain guy, right? So I don't get it. I don't get it with him. 17 total games played in 2022, but only got 76 total tackles. I don't know. So it's going to be interesting. I've totally got the Titans last as well in this. First you took the Colts, and I agree because Zaire Franklin, like you said, last year was ridiculous. And I'm looking at the numbers right now. He had 179 total tackles, over 100 solo. Over 100 solo. That's insane. That's like a good year. Yeah. And that was the fact that he only played, he played 16 games. So he still had some injuries, but he was on pace, man. He was on pace, like you said. So over 179. No, I had 179 tackles, over 100 solo. So yeah, I think the Colts are easy number 1 here. The Texans, Azeez Al-Shaair, man, he is definitely the captain of that defense. And the fact that they're bringing him in again, like as a free agent, he's just going to strengthen that. And again, another guy bouncing around the AFC South. He was on the Titans last year. 163 total tackles, 84 solo. And again, we talk about the Texans defense as a whole. You bring this guy in to kind of anchor that defense, and I think everyone's going to eat, really, right? Daniel Hunter, Will Anderson Jr., Azeez Al-Shaair, all these guys are going to eat no matter what. So, I'm going Houston 2, and then the Jags, 3. Again, you talked about Devin Lloyd, not seeing too much from him. Trayvon Walker is clearly the number 1 there. And again, with the addition of Arik Armstead, I feel like those two guys are really going to elevate each other, but not enough to where they can like leapfrog the Texans at all in terms of the linebacking core. So I'm going Colts, Houston, Colts, Texans, Jags, and Titans. And I think that's what you had, right?
Yeah. Wait, did you say Jags last?
No, Jags third.
Yep. So we have it exactly the same. Yep.
Okay.
So nothing. I mean, look at us finally agreeing on stuff. I mean, we've come a long way, haven't we?
For how long? How long can this unity and peace last?
I know. We'll see. We're going to move on to the safety position, and the safety position. This is going to be fun because you're going to be booing here in a second. So I got at number 1. No, not yet. At number 1, I got the Jacksonville Jaguars. They signed former Green Bay Packers safety Darnell Savage. this offseason. Cue the boo.
Boo!
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 He
This
was the
man!
Packer.
Boo!
But look, Savage, I think he's the best safety in the whole division. He offers the Jags a lot of flexibility because he can play multiple positions in the secondary. And I think it's also best because he's going to allow Andre Sisco to focus more on his strength, which was attacking and pursuing the ball carrier. And now you got Savage who can kind of do both. So it's just a perfect fit because Sisco wasn't really good in coverage, but he was good at, running up and making a play on the ball. And now you bring in Savage, and it really balances out the safety room. And then for depth pieces, they have Antonio Johnson and Terrell Edmonds. But I think Darnell Savage and Andre Sisco, Jags at number one when it comes to safety. Titans at 2. Titans would have liked to upgrade at free safety, but I do think that the duo of Amani Hooker and Molden, they showed some solid flashes last year. And keep in mind, too, Molden, he had his ups and downs last season, but he was fairly new at making the switch from corner to free safety. So I think there's reasons to be optimistic that he could take a step forward this season, being another year at the position. And Hooker's a reliable, strong safety. He's been reliable in his role. So I think you got a pretty solid group right there, assuming that Elijah Molden takes that next step. And then at 3, the Houston Texans, Jamie Ward is a player that knows DeMeco Ryans' defense like the back of his hand at this point. He's a veteran. He's been in the league a long time. You know what you're going to get. The Texans secondary was significantly better last season when Ward was healthy, because when he missed time, there was definitely a noticeable void on defense. And behind him, the Texans have Jalen Petrie, who struggled at times last season. But personally, why I have the Texans at 3 is the guy that's at number 3 on the depth chart, the safety they drafted out of USC, Kalen Bullock. I like Kalen Bullock. He looked good on tape. He was drafted this year in the draft, and I thought right away, I was like, oh, this guy is going to compete for snaps. And I wouldn't be shocked if he gets them and makes the most of those opportunities. And then at 4, I got the Colts, Julian Blackmon, Nick Cross, Rodney Thomas Jr., Danielle Scott. Julian Blackmon is the leader of the Colts safety room. He's probably the second best safety in the AFC South. The problem is that they don't really have a good second safety. Behind Blackmon, it's pretty bleak at safety for the Colts. Rodney Thomas Jr. was benched last season. Just because he was a liability. There was just times where he was so bad you didn't see him come back out onto the field. And it was like, oh, damn, it's rough. I know what it's like to be that bad at the safety position. It's a true liability that you can't afford. It's almost better to throw the third string safety out there and just see what you got, because you know that this guy sucks. So honestly, Julian Blackmon, he's a solid safety, but between Thomas Jr. and Cross, who are currently battling for the free safety job, they're both just lackluster, and it's going to make CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence and Will Levis really happy every time they get ready to play the Colts, because that safety position is suspect.
What they don't want to do is throw to Julian Blackmon, because he had 4 interceptions last year and he's at 7 total in his 4-year career. With that, I don't know, man. I don't know if I put them last. I really don't know if I put the Colts last.
Okay.
I don't know. Because I'm the type of guy who I've seen Bears free safeties.
What kind of guy? What kind of guy are you? Hold on.
I'm the kind of guy that loves when other guys get balls in their hands when they're not supposed to have those balls in their hands.
What kind of guy is Rick?
Yeah.
Is he kind of a dick?
Yeah.
Or is he tired of my shit? What kind of guy is Rick? What kind of guy is Rick? I just want to know it. What kind of guy is Rick? What guy is Rick? I just want to know. What kind of guy is Rick?
The kind with balls in his hands.
The kind of guy with balls in his hands.
I love interceptions. I absolutely love interceptions. That's the kind of guy I am. Julian Blackmon is an interceptor. He is a ball hawk.
Yes.
I like Amani Hooker. I do like Hooker.
You like Hookers?
Amani Hooker. Amani Hooker, don't do that. Don't do that. I love Amani Hooker, but you're right about Elijah Molden, man. These two guys, I don't like the vibes of their names. I don't like Hooker and Molden. I don't like it. I don't. I'm putting the Tennessee Titans fourth. I'm throwing Julian Blackmon and his ball hawk ways third with the Colts. The Jaguars, absolutely. Darnell Savage, man. You can't. You can only hate the game. You can't hate the player. Darnell Savage is a savage in all senses of his name. They're number one. And then the Texans. Yeah, the Texans are two, man. Although
Will Smith.
Yeah. I'm going to go Jags 1, Texans 2, Colts 3, Tennessee Titans 4. I know with Julian Blackmon on the Colts, there's really nothing else other than him. But that kind of strikes fear. Like I was saying, like you're going to have these division guys be like, I'm not throwing to that guy. Similar to, cornerbacks, which we'll get into, Patrick Surtain, Jalen Johnson, L'Jarius Sneed. These guys you're not going to want to throw to. And they're top 5, I believe, in PFF in terms of like quarterback completion percentage too. That's what you're going to get with Julian Blackmon. So that's going to open up a little bit in terms of like who Julian Blackmon is going to cover, right? Is he going to take your best guy away from you? Because really 4 interceptions last season as a free safety, that's kind of a 50-50 guy to me, really. So again, Indianapolis Colts the third with Julian Blackmon there. I love it. I like it.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I love interceptions. I think they're like the second most exciting play in sports. You have safeties that are pretty good, but interceptions are also up there. And interceptions usually done by the cornerback group. So let's talk about it. The best cornerback group, of course, the Titans. Their cornerback room was a liability last season, and they decided to do something about it. They made two big moves, including paying the L'Jarius Sneed a shit ton of money. When that deal happened, I was like, really? I mean, he's good. Damn, that's a lot of money. But I mean, name your price. He did. And Titans, like, this is the thing about the Titans is, like, we know that they weren't that great last season, but it really feels like they fixed their problems. They did something about them. They're not just going into another year hoping. They brought in one of the best corners that shut down Tyreek Hill in the playoffs. This is playoffs. We just want to win a game.
Playoffs.
So they also former Dallas Cowboy and former Cincinnati Bengal, Chibodi Awuzie. Awuzie may not.
There we go.
He might not have a ton of interceptions when you look at his stats, but his coverage ability grew tremendously in his last 2 years with the Bengals. So he's trending in the right direction. And they got even more aggressive by like I said, that trade for L'Jarius Sneed. So the Titans duo Sneed and Awuzie is, in my opinion, it's the far and away best cornerback duo in the AFC South. I don't think that the number 2 is that close to the Titans, which is crazy because the cornerback room was such a liability last season, and this is just a case of worst to first for the Titans. At number 2, I got the Texans. Derek Stingley Jr. panned out, and I made this point the other day in the podcast when I was doing it on my show, and I was talking about how if you draft a player that's not a cornerback or not a quarterback, not an offensive lineman in the top 10, that player works. If it's a cornerback, if it's a wide receiver or running back or a tight end, you're right. So, and I went back and I showed Jamar Chase, all these wide receivers that were drafted in the top 10, even Jalen Waddle, like you just don't miss on these. Like Malik Neighbors will not be a bust. Rome Odunze will not be a bust. These guys, they're right
Yes.
about. Quarterbacks is where you could totally whiff. Like, you still got Trey Lance being drafted
Chill.
third and Brock
Chill.
Purdy going undrafted. I'm just saying, like, quarterback, it does happen, but we're talking about cornerback. Patrick Surtain, drafted in number 11, I believe, overall. Like, these guys work. Derek Stingley Jr. was one of those guys. In last season, he had an incredible season. He actually displayed the lockdown coverage ability that the Texans saw when they drafted him. Third overall, which is not like, that is very, very high for a cornerback to be drafted. They did have a hole behind him, though, and they're kind of hoping that some of these younger players would step up. It's very similar to the Denver Broncos, where Patrick Surtain's a bona fide star, but who's going to be the guy on the other side? Because that is what the Texans needed. They have Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson, and they're hoping that one of those guys would step up, and they're still unproven. And they like Jeff Okudah, too. Keep in mind, he was a former first-round pick, and CJ Henderson is going to be battling with Jeff Okudah for that team's number 2 starting cornerback role. And then they use their second-round pick on Kamari Lassiter. So why I have the Texans at number 2 is because Derek Stingley Jr. is a bona fide star, and then Jeff Okudah, CJ Anderson, and then the drafting of Kamari Lassiter, I think, brings in a culture of competitiveness. With D'Amico Ryans being the head coach, I do think that one of these guys is going to rise at the top. I think iron sharpens iron. I think they're going to make each other better, and I think you're going to have maybe above mediocre cornerback 2 and a star. That puts you at number 2 to me. And then the Colts at 3, Kenny Moore. You know, the Colts are led by one of the best slot corners in the NFL. Kenny Moore is really great. But the problem is, outside of the slot position, there's a ton of question marks. So they have 2 cornerbacks who showed flashes last season, Juju Brents and Jalen Jones, and also Dallas Flowers. But his season was short because he tore his Achilles last season. So there's reason to be optimistic about the Colts cornerback room, just because you saw those flashes from those other guys. But I think they should have added an additional veteran presence. And I think if I had to say, like, a Stephon Gilmore, who was somebody that they actually had on the team and they don't have anymore. They no longer have him. I think that would have been somebody that they should have kept. They should have kept him. I think Stephon Gilmore went to the Cowboys last season, but the year before that, he played for the Colts. And I remember, because he had the interception when the Broncos played the Colts that sealed that game. So, yeah, I think the Colts, they come in at 3. There's optimism, but it's like wish in one hand, you know. And then at number 4, you have the Jags. And look, this is another thing where we go through and we say, look, Trevor Lawrence shouldn't get paid this kind of money if he can't win playoff games. But how many position groups are we going to go through? And the Jaguars are going to be 4 or 3. Cornerback is another issue. Ronald Darby is a guy I know dear to my heart. He was a Denver Bronco for, a couple of years, and I love him to death. Not the guy that, I mean, he's okay, but that's not what you want. You don't want that. He's the guy that comes in when your cornerback gets hurt and you feel good about. But he's not the guy you go out week 1 with. The Jags are led by Tyson Campbell, who unfortunately couldn't build off his elite season he had in 2022 because he only played 11 games last year because he dealt with injuries. So you do have durability coming up as a question mark. If he's able to return to what we saw in 2022, then the Jaguars secondary improves dramatically. But the problem is, behind Campbell, you don't have, well, let's just say everyone's very questionable. They're likely to put Ronald Darby in that spot to start opposite of Campbell. Darby was, like I said, mainly a depth piece for the Ravens last season. That's where he fits in best, as a depth piece. But he appears to be on the to be the guy that's taking on cornerback 2 role. I don't know how well that's going to go for the Jaguars. Another position group of the Jags kind of fall to the bottom here.
Yeah, and I have to 100% agree with Tyson Campbell, the Jags being fourth here. Tyson Campbell, the only guy that is anything that's consistent there, because then you look at Ronald Darby, like you said, former Bronco, but has bounced around the league. He's a journeyman cornerback. And like you said, I don't know if there's any sort of confidence you have as a fan with that guy over there being your quarterback too. You know what I mean? So Jacksonville easily number 4. At number 3, it's got to go to the Colts, just because they are younger. They are a little bit younger. Juju Brents and Jalen Jones. Those guys going into, Jalen Jones going into his second year, and then as well as Juju Brents. You did mention though Kenny Moore the second, the only name worth noting in this secondary in terms of like nickelback, cornerback, whatever. The Colts, because of how young they are and really the inexperience, is why I'm putting them at 3. So I don't think there's going to be any argument there. Jalen Jones though looked pretty good last season. And then second, Houston, absolutely Houston. Stingley is just the fucking man. Looking at his stats last season too. Where are they? Come on, pop up. God damn it. Sorry, everybody. My internet is so fucking slow. 5 interceptions. The 11 games played. That sucks. That sucks for a guy of his caliber. But he's going into year 3. You can only expect nothing but good things. With that being said, number 1, it is the Tennessee Titans. The only thing that worries me about the Tennessee Titans is you got 2 really good names in L'Jarius Sneed and what he was able to do in his time in Kansas City, as well as against a guy like Tyreek Hill, especially in the playoffs. But Chidobe Awuzie, I think, has only played 1 full season in 2019. So you start to think, okay, if we've got 2 really good guys here, cornerback, will Awuzie be able to play a full season? Will we be able to see the full extent of, his talents? That's really the only thing that worries me. L'Jarius Sneed is just a dog. He's played 15, 17, and 16 games the last 3 seasons. His rookie season's the only one where he played a little over half the year. But Chidobe Awuzie's kind of health is the big issue. But putting both of them together, Tennessee Titans are still number 1. Clear favorite there at cornerback.
Yeah, and another thing, you were right. Awuzie only had 2 seasons with the Bengals, but you got the offensive coordinator from the Bengals taking over as the head coach, so you do have some kind of chemistry between the 2.
Yeah.
So, pretty much agree on everything right there. And there's only a couple more to go through here, and we're going to pivot to running back, which is a really fun position to talk about. And at running back, this was a tough one for me, because on one hand, you have the running back Travis Etienne, who led the NFL last season in rushing touchdowns, and he's totally just dynamic and amazing. And on the other hand, you have who I believe is the best running back in the division in Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor didn't have his typical season last year. Well, because he was dealing with money issues throughout the offseason. And Zach Moss, was taking the snaps, and then all of a sudden he's like, no, I'll come back and play. Look, I'm going to clear this up for everybody confused. Don't jump off the Jonathan Taylor bandwagon. Jonathan Taylor is still the best running back in this division. He might be the best running back in the NFL. He might be. Like, he is that good. Yeah. He is not a fluke. He is just an amazing talent. I think he bounces back this season. I actually think he's the clear best running back in the division. And I do have Travis Etienne ranked pretty high. It is between those 2. But for me, I got to give the edge to Jonathan Taylor because I mean, the last week we saw him in week 18, he ran for 188 yards. I was talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
Like, he just he's a true bell cow, 3-down back. He's going to get a ton of snaps next season. Zach Moss is gone. I think that's going to put Jonathan Taylor right back to where we saw him last time we saw him. Whether you're talking about week 18 or the year before when he led the NFL, those are the type of production and the numbers that we're going to see from Taylor. And Travis Etienne does come in 2 for me. Depth-wise, they have Tank Bigsby and Dearness Johnson. Travis Etienne, to me, is the clear second running back in the draft. It wasn't hard at all to come to this acknowledgement. I think Travis Etienne, for a second, I looked at Jonathan Taylor and I thought about asking the question. And then I stopped myself and I was like, don't be an idiot. I do think that he's closer to being first than he is to being third. I'll say that. Etienne has that dual threat ability. He's a dynamic weapon, especially in the passing game for Trevor Lawrence. He's so dynamic that the Jags built a running back room behind him where if Etienne had to miss time, they would use 2 players to fill his position, Tank Bigsby and Dearness Johnson. That just tells you the kind of production that Travis Etienne is and how important he is to the Jaguars. This isn't a hit on Etienne. This is how high I am on Jonathan Taylor. So I do have Jonathan Taylor and then followed up by Travis Etienne and then Tony Pollard at 3. Tony Pollard, I think the Titans have the best backup in the AFC South, Tyjae Spears. He really popped off last season. I just doubt that the Titans' 2-man backfield is going to be more effective than either Taylor or Etienne in the Colts and Jaguars offenses. In terms of their starters, they signed Tony Pollard, which he didn't have his regular season, and it was kind of weird, right? He had such a good season that they were willing to send Ezekiel Elliott packing, and then Tony Pollard takes over, and he barely gets 1,000 yards. He has 6 touchdowns. He's really good as a receiver. He had 55 receptions for 311 yards, but I just have a hard time believing that Will Levis, who it doesn't typically look for the check down, will utilize Pollard in the passing game in a similar way that Dak Prescott used him in Dallas. But I do think that he'll be more productive. He'll be really productive outside of the running game, just not as much as he was in Dallas. But it's another move. Like, what if they all just gel? That's the question. Because the Titans have addressed every need, and they did fill it on paper. But how is it going to look when the game starts? And will Levis look for those checkdowns? And will Tony Pollard get back to what he was 2 years ago? And then last, this is crazy, but it's Joe Mixon. And Joe Mixon has been one of the most reliable backs in the NFL. CJ Stroud had such a good season that I don't think the Texans spent a lot of time thinking about running back, but it's hard to say that this is a weakness. Joe Mixon is really, really good. They did try to sign Saquon Barkley, which would have, in hindsight, would have been absolutely insane. They weren't able to succeed in that, but I still think they upgraded when they got Joe Mixon. I think he raises the floor and the ceiling of the running game significantly from last season. But you know what? I'm making a real-time switch. I'm actually going to put the Titans at 4 and the Texans at 3, just because when you have the best wide receiver group in the NFL, the running back does benefit from that. So I'm going to go number 1, Colts, number 2, Jags, number 3, Texans, number 4, Titans.
Okay. This one was hard because you made the switch here at the end, and I was thinking too, like, this is kind of like a big one, because really all these running backs are pretty damn good. God. Okay. I'm going to do something here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to rank the depth first at 4, because really, I mean, we got to think about that. Like, do you have a good 1-2 punch? At 4, I think I have to go Titans. Tyjae Spears last year for the Titans, not a whole lot from Spears. Not a whole lot from Spears at all. So Kyle, I'm doing depth first, and then I'm going to go like RB1, who I think is the best. In terms of depth, at 4th is the Titans. I was going into Tyjae Spears. Like, he didn't really do much. There were some times where he looked really good. But then, I mean, you got to give it to Derrick Henry. You got to give it to King Henry, right? Like, he is he was the star last year with the Titans.
Definitely.
So yeah, in terms of depth, Titans are 4th. Oh man,
Tyjae Spears look good though.
Yeah. In those spurts, he did look pretty decent, I will say. After that, I have to go Jaguars. Travis Etienne. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Travis Etienne, monster, stud. Tank Bigsby, Dearness Johnson. Tank Bigsby was a rookie last year. Dearness Johnson has kind of bounced around the league. He's only had 3 touchdowns in like 6 years. So the depth behind Etienne, not great. Then I'm going Colts, Jonathan Taylor, Trey Sermon. To be honest, the depth, not great after Jonathan Taylor, but it's Jonathan Taylor and whoever else wants to step in. So I'm very comfortable in that. And then number 1 in depth, I'm absolutely going Texans. You got Joe Mixon, you got Dameon Pierce, who have been absolute studs, or at least Dameon Pierce had one really, really good year. And then last year with kind of how Bill's saying here with Singletary there at RB1, didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to kind of, do what he did his first season. They bring in Joe Mixon, who is crazy again that you made the switch. A guy out of 4 out of the 7 years who had over 1,000 yards. It's crazy to even have him 3rd best. But I was saying, like, that is just saying how good this running back division is. But yeah, in terms of depth, they're number 1. Running back 1, though, the best RB1 in this division, I have to agree. It's Taylor. It's Jonathan Taylor. It is. He only played 10 games last season again, right? Like, we get that. He was in a contract dispute. Running backs are getting paid now. The cap jumped up. They're getting paid now. Travis Taylor is number 1 in terms of running backs in this division. Number 2, it's Etienne. It is Etienne. That guy, along with Evan Ingram on that offense, like, does it all. Him and Evan Ingram were the 1-2 punch on that offense. Obviously not including Trevor Lawrence because he's the quarterback, right? But outside of him, it's like they were the do-it-all guys on the offense. So absolutely, Etienne is number 2. Number 3, yeah, I have to go Joe Mixon, man. 4 out of 7 years, you're rushing for over 1,000 yards. In 2021, he had, In 2021, he had 13 touchdowns. He only had 9 last year, but that's still like amazing for a running back. And then 4th, Tony Pollard. Again, 2 years in a row over 1,000 yards, but his yards per carry dipped significantly, over a yard from last season, from the season prior in 2022. Wow. So yeah, over a yard less per carry is insane. So Tony Pollard is 4th. And we talked about his receiving, right? Like, he can do that. I think that's a positive because, again, Calvin Ridley's getting paid good money. You got DeAndre Hopkins. You bring in, who was it for the Titans? You bring in Tyler Boyd. That's who it was. Yeah. If one of those guys has a bad year, if one of those guys is injured, Tony Pollard can kind of fill that gap in terms of catching the ball and making something happen too. So while I get that, yeah, you want to just have your wide receiver 1 through 3 be the guy that Will Levis is throwing to, I think Tony Pollard could absolutely step in and be that guy. Again, another sort of safety blanket for Will Levis in the receiving category. So those are that's my 1 through 4. But in terms of depth, Houston Texans are number 1.
Yeah, I agree. And also the offensive coordinator for the Bengals, Joe Mixon. I mean, yeah, the philosophy is favorable for Tony Pollard to kind of get back to what he was doing. Remember, Mike McCarthy was calling the plays last season, and it seemed to affect Tony Pollard a little bit more than when Kellen Moore, affect him in a bad way than when Kellen Moore was calling the plays. So I do think having a head coach that wants the running backs to play a significant role in the receiving game is going to help Tony Pollard get back, hopefully, because he is at a fork in the road right now. Running backs get given up on quick. You can have the season you had last season if you had the season you had before it, but you can't have the season you had last season again. You have to go back to what you had. So this is a fork in the road, but I do expect the philosophy of the head coach to play a big role in that. And now we go to offensive line. And offensive line, I just can't say enough about how important it is. I'm not going to go through all the names because I'll tell you, I'll definitely talk about the names that you guys know, but I'm not going to fly through this, but I'll probably move a little swifter. So the Colts definitely come at number one. They have the most expensive offensive line of any team in the AFC South, and they play like it. The unit is one of the best groups in the NFL, not just the AFC South. And what I like about the Colts is that their offensive line has a little bit of everything that you look for on an offensive line. They have a superstar, they have proven veterans, and they have young upside. Quentin Nelson is the guy that you know, and he continues to be one of the most dominant offensive linemen in the league. And they also have proven veterans who've played at a high level, like center Ryan Kelly and Braden Smith. And they have young and up-and-coming left tackle in Bernard Raymond, who has shown flashes at being an elite left tackle. And they have a right guard, Will Fries, who he's been effective in his young career. I didn't know his name that well until I pulled up their offensive line, but he had a pretty good PFF grade last season. So, what I like about the Colts is that they're built for the future along with the present. They have multiple players drafted over the last couple of seasons, and they used a top 4 round pick on Blake Freeland and Matt Goncalves. I think that was this season. Yeah, the names, but I think he was drafted in this year's draft, and he was, I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, a top 15 offensive lineman in the draft. So they continue to build, and this is the smart way to do it. When you have veterans and you have superstars, draft young people so that they can teach you your ways. They can teach you, oh, hey, you're going to be hanging out with, Quentin Nelson all off season, young rookie. This is the way to do it. That's why when Jason Kelsey retired from football, the team came to him and they said, hey, before you retire, let us know who you want us to draft, because it's going to be your job to kind of coach this guy up and make sure that transfer happens. The Colts have this whole thing down. Their offensive line is as solid as it comes, and you can tell that the drafting philosophy of this team has been having a strong offensive line is very important to them. And some of the greatest coaches in the NFL feel the same way. Sean Payton came to Denver. First thing he did was invest a shit ton of money in the offensive line. And then you see guys like Harbaugh go to the Chargers and draft Joe Alt with the number 4 pick in the draft and not feel bad about it at all, because there is a truth to this offensive line thing. Okay. It's not a luxury. It is a necessity. You have to have an offensive line. You have to. And if you don't have one, you're not probably going to the playoffs. It's as simple as that. I just recently saw the general manager come out for the Giants and say, oh, Patrick Mahomes couldn't play behind the offensive line that the Giants had. It's like, stop. No, that's not how that works. First off, even if you have a bad offensive line, yes, Patrick Mahomes would have looked a lot better than Daniel Jones because he's Patrick Mahomes. put a little bit
That's
of
fair.
respect on his
That's
name
fair.
coming from an AFC West guy. But
Uh-huh.
I do think that the offensive line is very important. And it's kind of like there was this thing. I'm trying to think of this is like a metaphor, and I'm trying to think of how to say it, where it's like, I'm trying to think of one that's not offensive, because all the ones I've heard are like offensive political statements. Okay, I'm not signing off on this statement, but this is my metaphor, where they say, not all Trump supporters are racist, but all racists are Trump supporters. Like, no, I'm not signing off on that, but stick with me. This is kind of how I feel about offensive lines. Like, not every strong offensive line makes the playoffs, but every team in the playoffs generally has a strong offensive line. So you really do need the offensive line to be solid. And then
Okay.
coming in at 2, I got the Texans. Laramie Tunsil, one of the only players, I think the only player to have an ownership stake in his team, somebody that the team has really built around. Kendrick Green at left guard, and then right tackle, they got Titus Hayward. I mean, their left tackle in Tunsil, he's one of the best in the NFL, period.
Yep.
They have a solid veteran in Shaq Mason at right guard. The rest of the group is pretty much a question mark, but they did end last season playing their best football as a group. The team's definitely going to have to decide whether they're going to extend Titus Howard within the next year, and it's going to depend on how he does this season, because right now he's kind of in limbo. They did use the 59th pick in the draft on Blake Fisher, the right tackle out of Notre Dame, which could allow them to have a replacement for Hayward if after next year they want to move away from him. But Laramie Tunsil's so good that it kind of bolsters this whole group to number 2. And then at 3, I got the Jaguars. Cam Robinson, Ezra Cleveland, some of the names that I know personally. The Jags handed out 2 relatively large contracts to young offensive linemen over the last 2 seasons in Cam Robinson and Ezra Cleveland. I think it's fair to say that the Jags probably regret paying Robinson, because he's dealt with multiple injuries and he really hasn't elevated his play much at all, even when he's healthy. The Jags offensive line has not been a strong suit. Let's just be real. And then at number 4, I got the Titans. They did draft J.C. Latham out of Alabama. Latham ended up as a lot of people's highest graded right tackle in the draft. But there are a lot of questions on if he can be effective at the left tackle position, which is where the Titans are probably going to have him play. I don't think that's a good decision personally. I think the Titans should put a young rookie where he's most comfortable. But the offensive line coach for the Titans, he is a guru, Bill Callahan. Everybody has been talking about this guy. So look, at the end of the day, whatever he signs off on, whatever he thinks is best, I think that is what is best. So Titans coming in at number 4. And I'll also say, no, I'm moving the Titans to 3 because Lloyd Cushenberry was the Broncos' most improved player on PFF last offseason. And the Titans have Lloyd Cushenberry. I think he's going to be a solid center. And then J.C. Latham, I think, like, unless he's a bust, he's going to work out for the team. The right side of the line, though, is pretty brutal. That's what makes it tough for the Titans. Like, they got the center, they got him, but you go to the right side of the line in Daniel Brunskill, he's going to be the starting right tackle, and it just doesn't look that great. So, honestly, the Jags and Titans both don't have very great offensive lines, especially when you look at the Colts. They're one of the best in the league. And give the Texans credit, because you got a really good quarterback. You got a lot of weapons. Usually the offensive line is where you got your weak spot. And you can't really say that the Texans have a weak offensive line. They found a way to build a really solid team altogether, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why, because PFF has the Colts number 3, and that is easy. The offensive line is easy. They are the top offensive line in this division, and it seems to be one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. And all 5 starters from last year are coming back. So you mentioned that and how good they are. So they are easily number 1. PFF has the rest of these guys 22 or worse, 22nd or worse. That's crazy. And the thing is, they have the Titans pretty much like near the bottom. And with Bill Callahan there, young guys in Skoronski and Latham, you bring in Lloyd Cushenberry, which again, you mentioned PFF had him as the like most improved almost lineman in the NFL last season. That entire side of that line, that entire left side of the line is going to be amazing for a guy like Levis, for his development and just for his, I guess, confidence too. And that gives the Titans a pretty good idea of like who they have in him. So that entire left side of the line is good. Honestly, I've got the Tennessee Titans at 3rd, and I've got the Jaguars 4th. So Texans 2nd. The Texans again, Laramie Tunsil, absolutely right. Like he is a mainstay, and the fact that he wasn't picked higher during his draft because he smoked weed is absolutely hilarious. Now, like 11 years later, it is absolutely hilarious. Oh man,
I love how that makes you irresponsible somehow.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Regardless, right? Like he is a mainstay at the offensive line, one of the best left tackles in the league. For his entire career. Injuries and unproven younger guys on the offensive line for the Texans, kind of you saw what happens after that, and injuries as well. You saw what happened with that last season, but they're still much better than what the Jags and what the Titans so far last season we have seen from them. Obviously, the Titans, they brought in Lloyd Cushenberry and they drafted J.C. Latham. So there's potential. We just got to see how that works out. The Jags being last, a lot of that talent on the offensive line is like 1st or 2nd rounders, and they haven't really lived up to that hype or where they were drafted. So that's why they're 4th. Again, the Colts, there's really not much you can say other than they continue to have one of the best offensive lines. And that again is going to be so huge for Richardson and his confidence and his abilities and whatever he could do at the quarterback position. So yeah, Colts, Texans, Titans, and then Jaguars last for me.
Yeah, and we agreed on all 4 of those. And I'm telling you, we're definitely going to agree on the last but most important position in not just the NFL, but arguably all of sports, the quarterback position. We're going to start off with the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud. And I think the Texans coming in at first at the QB position, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by that. CJ Stroud's coming off of one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen, ever. Him and DeMeco Ryans have turned the Texans franchise around in what feels like a blink of an eye. I mean, it's just incredible. And I think it's safe to say Stroud's the best quarterback in the AFC South. And he probably has the clearest path to taking his team to a Super Bowl and being on the cover of Madden and just being a full-blown star in the NFL. He feels like, to me, the next great QB in the NFL. I've said that all offseason. I'll continue to say that. CJ Stroud, we haven't seen. He's a generational type of player, future Hall of Famer. And number 2 is somebody that I still believe will be in the Hall of Fame. So this is just the way it is. Like normally I would have Trevor Lawrence at number 1. There happened to be this guy named CJ Stroud that just, I can't ignore that. I can't ignore
lit it up.
Season. He lit it up. Steph Curry doesn't stop shooting, and neither does CJ Stroud. After Stroud, I think the rankings become pretty easy, though, for all of us to kind of fall into place. Trevor Lawrence is number 2. He's had his ups and downs, but to be fair, the Jaguars as a whole have had their holes in their team. And Lawrence is definitely already flashed his talents to justify not only being the first overall pick, but the amount of money that he was just paid. I do think losing Calvin Ridley is going to hurt, but Trevor Lawrence has had success with worse wide receivers than the ones that they'll have coming up this offseason. So I think with Lawrence under center, the Jaguars are always in the discussion for the AFC South crown. And because of that, Trevor Lawrence comes in at number 2. And then I'm going to put Anthony Richardson at 3. And I know we didn't see a lot, but I'm going to go quality over quantity here. I saw Anthony Richardson in the preseason make a couple passes that, to me, passed my eyeball test. When I saw him do that, I said, oh, he's going to be able, he can do this. He can play at this level. He's not a project. He's ready to go right now. And I think he flashed, next level potential during the 4 games that he did play in last season. So I did the MVP odds, and his MVP odds were, I think, higher than, like, maybe right there with Jalen Hurts. It was obnoxious.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. And I was like, well, do they know something that we don't? But the truth is that he's still only 22 years old. He has a full offseason now. He's come out publicly and said he understands the playbook. He's miles above where he was last season. And I thought last season he was going to shock the league, and he got his time cut short. 4 games.
Yep.
It could have been 4 snaps like Rodgers, but regardless, I think Anthony Richardson is going to capitalize on having a whole season kind of holding a clipboard and just rehabbing. I think there's serious argument to have him ranked by the end of the season. If he does have that type of a year, there's going to be a serious argument to have him ranked 2 over Lawrence. But until he does actually put that season together, he's going to stay comfy at 3. And I'm going to put, of course, Will Levis at 4. He had the 1 game where he threw the 4 touchdown passes, but then he threw 4 touchdown passes collectively for the rest of the season. He's 25 before the upcoming season. That's the same age as Trevor Lawrence, but it feels like Trevor Lawrence is much older than him. And then you also have Stroud, who's going to be 23, and Richardson's 22. So Will Levis is the oldest quarterback in this division. That means, to me, Will Levis arguably has the least amount of time to waste in terms of reaching his potential. And the Titans are like, they understand that. They didn't adjust the quarterback position. They give him plenty of weapons to work with for the upcoming season. But this is Will Levis's season to prove it. And anytime you have a quarterback that is 1 season away from not even being on the team, generally that player is going to come in for.
Yeah, I agree with your rankings. This is easy. This is really easy to just rank the quarterbacks in this division. It is CJ Stroud number 1. You got to go Trevor Lawrence number 2. Obviously, a lot of Jags fans were very disappointed with what happened last season. They came into the year going division winners. Trevor Lawrence is going to play like an MVP. He's possibly going to do this, he was playing hurt. He got hurt. He missed the game, right? He didn't play at that level. He didn't play as well or better as his second year. Again, it was because of injuries. We saw him on the field getting injured, and he tried to fight back, and he did so throughout the season. The Jags were still in it in week 18. It's just that they, Texans were the better team at the end of the season. But we can't discount what the Jags did. They still had a winning record. We're 1 game behind the Texans. So a healthy Trevor Lawrence, I think, puts up a really, really good fight with CJ Stroud. Now, third with Anthony Richardson. Very, very few games that we saw from him. Obviously, there were a lot of good from him. And like you said, with a complete offseason, with the playbook, and you got Shane Steichen there as your head coach and offensive guru, that's going to be really good. You got the number 1 offense in this offensive line in this division. And again, a top 5, top 3 in the NFL. That's just going to help you get so much better. Will Levis at number 4. 100%. He had a 4-touchdown game and then 4 touchdowns collectively. He almost had 2,000 yards in those 9 games played. Yeah, he almost had 2,000 yards, a little over 1,800. So it's really, that's a really good feeling, I think, if you're a Titans fan, because now you're brought in Bill Callahan, who is the offensive line whisperer. Yeah, his son is the head coach. You bring in a bunch of weapons for him to throw the ball around with. A lot of potential there for the quarterbacks in this division, especially the bottom two with Richardson and Levis. But CJ Stroud's the man, dude. I mean, it's crazy to go into, us doing this, the division rankings and ranking quarterbacks and being like, yeah, this second-year quarterback, this rookie quarterback last year is better than Trevor Lawrence in going after year 3. It's insane, but they made it to a division playoff game. They fucking they wiped the floor with the Browns in the wild card game at home. One of the best defenses in the league. Stroud had an amazing game. He had an amazing season, going 300 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, almost every game. So the rankings for this are easy. It's CJ Stroud. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence. It's going to be Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. But every single one of these guys, barring any sort of injury or anything crazy happening this coming season, they all have a really, really good shot at, shuffling up the rankings for next season. I really truly believe that with a lot of things that are going within the organization, a lot of things that are happening within the organization, you got to look at these little small moves and be like, that's potential right there for an amazing year from Will Levis with the correct protection of his offensive line and some better weapons than last year. Anthony Richardson, again, may have this amazing season after pretty much coming out of nowhere in the draft and being drafted, 4th or 5th, I think, overall in quarterback wise or something like that. It's just like, where did this guy come from? All of a sudden, a week before the draft, we're talking about Anthony Richardson, the guy from Florida. So there's a lot of potential here. Yeah, the combine. Yeah, there you go. So again, a lot of potential. I don't think, kind of looking at this after the season ended, you were looking at the AFC South and being like, yeah, Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud. But then you're like, now all the moves are being made and we're a couple months out from the season. You're like, this is going to be a pretty entertaining division, the AFC South.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see, if the division rankings were going to line up exactly how the quarterbacks do. So I got my number 1 team in the division, and now we have finally made it to the part of the show where we are going to predict the AFC South.
Yep.
And we have dove into the details, and now it's time to make a decision. For me, this isn't that hard.
Let's go 4, 3, 2, 1 at the same time.
4, 3, 2, 1. Texans.
Texans are winning the division.
The Texans are winning. Yeah. And look, you guys know how I've been talking about the Texans. So I'm at risk for people to be calling me a little like homerism here because I put it on my Twitter bio. But the Texans are clearly the best team in the division right now. CJ Stroud, he's going to be an MVP candidate. They have arguably, I would say 3 top 25 receivers in football, and their defensive front has, multiple stars. The secondary, like we talked about, a little bit sus, but if they can rush the passer the way that they're expected to, that shouldn't be as big of a deal as it would be otherwise. And an unlucky injury or two could derail everything. But if they can stay healthy, then I think that this is their division to lose, at least for the next 2 to 3 years.
I agree. All the weapons, again, just building off that rookie season for both CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans, just the success they had, the togetherness feeling that team has is just going to keep building. Again, unless something crazy happens to CJ Stroud or, this offense in general, they're going to win the division. It's going to be interesting though. Talking about the defensive side of the Texans, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, Aziz Al-Shair. Seeing that defense go up against the Colts offense, and specifically the offensive line, see how those two like top units in that division go up against each other, because I think those games are going to be fucking great. Colts and Texans, I'm calling it now. Those are going to be some tough games, but Houston Texans are winning this division. Again, based off last year, if they continue to do that, they've improved both offensive and defensively. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Houston Texans number 1.
All right, here's where I'm going to shock you. I don't have 2, 3, 4. I have 2, 2, 4.
Oh,
I got 2A and 2B. I got two teams finishing with the same record, and it's the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Wow.
We're about to see how much happiness money can really buy. And I think you've got to give Tennessee credit, because they heard everybody talking about a lengthy rebuild coming up, and they decided to skip it completely and just pay everything that they needed on paper. And like I said, on paper, now we've gone through every position, and I can honestly say that they look sneaky good. Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins are going to make life a lot better for Will Levis. They turned what was the league's worst offensive line into one that at the very least has a bunch of potential, especially with the coach that they have. Awuzie was a nice under the radar move. And then of course, L'Jarius Sneed was kind of a flex at that point.
Yeah.
Now history has kind of shown us in the recent past that teams that have tried to buy their way out of being irrelevant has actually worked. And I kind of respect how the Titans have approached this whole offseason. They're definitely not sitting on their hands here, and I think it's going to work. I think the Titans are going to surprise a lot of people. And with the Jaguars, if you look at them, you're thinking, well, how could they be tied with the Titans? Well, look, I do think Trevor Lawrence is too good to be tied with the Titans, but we go through the positions and you see the holes.
Yeah.
You see the issues, you see the flaws. So don't be alarmed by it. But I do think it's going to be panic time in Jacksonville. The Jags are simply the latest example of how quickly things can go south for anyone. Just a few years ago, they had probably one of the best young quarterbacks in football. And now I think there's going to be kind of this thing where what do we do? Doug Peterson's his seat's going to get really hot if they don't win the division, especially after paying Lawrence. The division has the division expectations, I think, have kind of passed with the Texans emerging. Is Brian Thomas Jr. going to be the answer to the Jaguars? Because their other options are not very inspiring. I do think that the Jags have the quarterback, but there's just too many holes in this team. You're asking Trevor Lawrence to do too much. I think if you put Trevor Lawrence on the Titans, oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. But what makes it tie for 2 for me is that you don't have Trevor Lawrence on the Titans. You have Will Levis on the Titans, and you have a better quarterback on a worse roster, arguably, in Jacksonville. So I think they both go 9-8, 10-7. I'm not sure. Somewhere around there. But yeah, I'm shocked because I would have thought right when the offseason started, Tennessee Titans were a 5-win football team. I don't feel that way.
Ooh, okay. So I'm going to go 2 and 3 here. Because I was thinking about this too. I mean, the Texans clear-cut favorite, and then the next 3, I was like, oh shit. I was like, I'm not overthinking this. Number 2 are the Jags. I'm going with them over the Titans. I'm not saying Titans are 3 yet, but I'm going with the Jags over the Titans in your scenario here because the Jags have much better. I would say they're much better in the defensive category. The best part about the Titans defense is Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed, their cornerbacks. That's kind of it. That's kind of where they're winning this game, right? They're winning at cornerback. Really, everything else, I think I'm going to go with Jags on the defensive side. And yes, you are asking Trevor Lawrence to do a lot. You're asking him to win the division and use it and will it, like use his will to fucking push this team to 11, 12, 13 wins, possibly if he can. I just think the Jags are the better team too. I think they're more established. They got Doug Peterson as a head coach there. He's won a Super Bowl. You saw what happened his first year there. Trevor Lawrence's second year. Trevor Lawrence, what do you do? He had like 20 something touchdowns to single digit interceptions and had an amazing season going into last year being like, this guy's a possible MVP, right? Like this guy's going to show out now. Again, and we talked about his injuries. I just think into year 4, knowing the mistakes he made, knowing where he can improve, is going to be huge. The wide receiving core, I'm right there with you when we were talking about it earlier. It's going to be a tough thing to get over, but the best quarterbacks, they get over it. If Christian Kirk is your number 1 and Gabe Davis, who, does have some injuries, is your number 2, Trevor Lawrence is going to be like, you know what? Those are my number 1 and 2 guys. I have Evan Engram. I've got Etienne. We've got an offense that can win games. Now it's up to the defense really to hold up their end of the bargain because they were just gone for huge parts of the season last year. So it really is on the defense. And again, I could see your point into why the Titans look like a better option over the Jags. And again, you're thinking same record, 2A, 2B. I'm thinking the Jaguars are just a little bit better and they take that number 2 spot and secure it. And possibly even a wild card spot, but we're going to talk about playoffs once the time comes. So Jaguars at 2. At 3, again, not trying to overthink this, but I'm going Colts. I'm going Colts at 3. They got one of the best offensive lines. Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen look like an awesome duo there, head coach and quarterback. I mean, similar to D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud, like they look like they are paired well together and their energy is just the same. And they're bringing that swagger back to their team. So Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen, I love that. I love Michael Pittman Jr. being wide receiver number 1. The defense can be better. They've got a lot of holes. Really, their best asset on the defense is like DeForest Buckner and oh my God, I'm forgetting the linebacker's name. We talked about him. I'm going to look it up. Hold on. It is Zaire Franklin. There you go.
Yeah. I knew it was a Z name, but we did so many Z names that I was like,
exactly. So I wasn't trying to overthink it. I'm getting Colts at in third place there in that division, and that just leaves us with a disagreement at pretty much throughout the whole thing, other than the Texans. But you've got the Colts last. I've got the Titans last.
Yeah, and I can hardly call it a disagreement because the way I have it set up is where like the Titans and Jags are 9-8 or 10-7, and then the Colts are 8-9. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think if you wanted to swap the Colts with the Jags or the Colts with the Titans, I certainly won't stop you here. I think there you could see how the Colts could end up being a real problem for Houston. Like, I'm with you. Richardson, he flashed a bunch, and it was a short time, but he was definitely in a good situation where it looked like the Colts coaching staff knew exactly how to game plan for this young, exciting quarterback who is still adjusting to pro football. And they deserve a lot of credit for executing this offseason plan exactly how they wanted to. And even if it was apparently just kind of run it back mentality, their defensive line is going to give other teams a lot of issues. And you definitely could do a lot worse than Michael Pittman and Adonai Mitchell. It still feels like they're a few years away from being a really competitive team. But, as Anthony Richardson goes, so will the Colts. And I feel good about Anthony Richardson, but I don't know if I feel good enough to just jump him up the boards here. But like I said, it's Texans at 1, and then the Jags, Titans, and Colts are going to battle. And that's the way it's going to be. And any one of these could be out of place. The Jags could be 2. The Jags could be 4. The Colts could be 2. The Titans could be 3. I'm not sure how it's going to unfold. I think it's going to come down to the wire between these 3. But for just the sake of putting something on paper, I got the Texans, Titans, Jags, and Colts.
Yep, and I've got the Texans, the Jags, the Colts, and the Titans coming in last. And you made a lot of good points with the Titans too. And again, the bottom three teams you can kind of shuffle again depending how everything works out. I just think with the Titans, their offense is going to be awesome. It's just their defense that is going to continue to struggle. We talked about the offensive line and what they did to improve that entire left side, including the center of that offensive line for Will Levis. We talked about the weapons they added in Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd. I just think the defense is going to be the struggling part there. The offense is going to shine. I feel like that's what it's going to be. But then you've got much better defenses in that division that are going to, for the most part, have their way with you, really. So,
yeah, and I agree with this comment from Nick. I just don't think the Titans have their guy yet. Well, I think the Colts and the Jags do. And yeah, like we saw that game from Will Levis, that first game that he played. And now you surround him with a better offensive line, better weapons. It's intriguing. And you got an offensive coach, which is also something like that's the whole thing about predictions is right now, the Titans don't have their guy. But by week 10, we could say that the Titans have their guy. And the real question is, will Levis be the guy? And I think that he's in a good position to secure that job. So it's gonna be a fun year to watch, especially the AFC South. There's gonna be a lot of really good primetime games in the AFC South, and this is our last month of no football.
Yeah, dude, you put that up on the YouTube page, and I was like, let's fucking go. But real quick before we move on, the odds for a lot of like casinos, Vegas, whatever, they got Texans winning. They got Jaguars coming in second, although they're very close with the Colts, but they have the Colts third and the Titans fourth. So the odds in Vegas and some other betting apps and websites agree with us. They got the Texans winning this division easily. So I just wanted to give you guys that, but not even a month, not even a full month, dude. We got like 21, 22 days of no football, and then it's football. It is all football.
Let's go.
Let's fucking go. What were you going to say something? Oh, before that, real quick, that, we're going to get to that. We are going to get to that. Before that, we got a couple updates for everybody here. Thank you so much. One, for being here. But one, I was just in contract with a house. So I'm in contract for a house. We're finally moving. It's going to take a bit. It's going to be about a month, but we're finally moving. So my background won't look fucking boring anymore. So, here comes Kyle with the guitar. Let's go.
What kind of house is it? I just want to know. What kind of guy is Rick? I just want to know.
I'm a guy with a house. I'm the kind of guy that just went under contract with a house. So yeah, this background won't look as fucking lame as it has been for the last couple months.
It's growing on me.
Yeah, I love the plainness. Second update. The whole membership super chat thing will be reinstated right after I move in. So like we're thinking like mid-August, everything should start, going back to memberships, perks, super chats, members only stuff. So make sure mid-August, a couple weeks right before the season starts, we're going to get that ramped up again. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. So I wanted to give you guys those quick updates because I know you guys have been asking about that, and it's been a hectic last few weeks during the off season. But Kyle, is it time for the motherfucking chive?
Welcome to the Chives with Kyle. My chives today are going to be a couple quick little news pieces here. So one, Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott clears up using a walking boot. And I quote, literally, it's absolutely nothing. Okay. Now, I just want to say before I even read this to you,
Yes.
Rick, have you ever left your house, going to work, and you're getting ready to go? You're at the front door. You sit on that little bench. You're getting ready to put your shoes on. You just go, today I'm going to wear a walking boot. Has that ever happened?
I've never been like, you know what? Today seems like a walking boot type of day. I'm not wearing my Adidas, not wearing my Air Force Ones. I'm going walking boot. No, that has never fucking crossed my mind.
Well, I feel a little bit like I understand it, but at the same time, kind of calling bullshit on it. Now, here's the part that I understand. I was just about to say, look, I never, even when I've never done that, I've never wanted to wear a walking boot for no reason. Not only that, I snapped my ankle a couple of weeks ago and had to go to the ER, and they gave me a walking boot, and I only wore it for 2 days because I just couldn't stand it. And now I feel like I screwed myself because I can already tell it's still not healed when I'm sitting, crisscross applesauce. I'm like, I feel that. I'm like, oh. And then in 7 years before that, I snapped my ankle, way worse. And that injury I never recovered from. And that's kind of what Dak Prescott's saying here. He said, honestly, I'm getting older. It's the same ankle that I snapped and had a nasty surgery on 4 years ago. I never had surgery. That's why I never got better. I didn't have insurance at the time. I just dealt with it.
You just had youth.
Yeah, that was like that was barely. I mean, that was rough. I mean, even for youth. But he said a couple of hard days of training, and it gets a little sore, and you're going on a fishing trip, and you want to protect it and make sure things don't get worse. I do think that this is something. He says it's nothing, but let's be real. If you have past trauma injury and you're just doing some annual football training, and it's to the point where you have to wear a boot on to go on your fishing trip, that's something. Because when the season starts, you're going to be dealing with a lot more wear and tear than that. I mean, honestly, he's probably just like, hey, let me just protect it and not put unnecessary pressure on it. When you're in that boot, it really does just take all of that pressure off the ankle. So this could just be what do you call it? Like precautionary stuff where he's just trying to do a little preventative maintenance on his part. But what do you think about this whole wearing a boot is absolutely nothing story?
It's something. It is absolutely something. What have we seen last year from Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence when they sprained ankles or when they, had stingers or something like that? We saw their skills diminish right before our eyes on nationally televised football games. So it's definitely something, especially when you're going out on a fishing trip. Like Bill said, like he was out on a fishing trip, right? Yeah, like you're out on a fishing trip, you're not doing workouts. Why are you wearing the boot if it's nothing? It is absolutely something you should be worried about. And Cowboys fans, like the whole contract situation with Dak now, it's like, okay, what the fuck, dude? If this thing from 4 years ago is bothering you now, or you rehash the injury, whatever it is, then yeah, are you going to get a contract? Fuck no, you're not, dude. We're going to go younger. We're going to go with a guy who hasn't snapped his ankle or
Trey
something.
Lance.
We're going to go with Trey Lance, baby, former first-round pick. That's totally a viable option. Yeah.
People forget Trey Lance is on the roster. And the last story I wanted to give you is a little more fun and hilarious. Giants head coach Brian Daboll guarantees.
Here we go, Bill. Here we go.
He can run a 7.0 40-yard dash. Guaranteed it.
I saw this.
So everyone knows speed on an NFL field is essential. On the sideline, not necessarily unless you're Sean McVay and you want to run down the sideline with your team. I've seen him do that. But this is what Brian Dabble said on the second episode of Hard Knocks. He said, "I guarantee you I could run a 7.040." Dabble told members of New York's front office as wide receivers ran the 40-yard dash during the scouting combine. It was a declaration met by a cry of no way, to which the head coach doubled down by claiming he'd achieve such a feat if a plate of wings awaited him at the finish line. My question is, what kind of wings? Spicy wings, jalapeno, habanero, scooter. There's so many flats, legs. What are in here? Because now, I want some wings right now. But just then, the future 9th overall pick by the Bears, Rome Odunze, clocked an unofficial 4.47 40-yard dash time. He eventually left the combine with an official 4.45, providing an unfortunate parameter for comparison. General manager used it to his advantage and posed up a following question. So you think you could be less than 3 seconds behind him? Wow. Now think about that.
Yeah.
3 seconds behind that speed that you just saw. So rightfully so, a pause followed, not nearly long enough for Dable to complete his own hypothetical dash, but noticeable nonetheless, which Dabble tripled down. Yes. Dabble swears that he can run a 7.0 40-yard dash. The exchange provided a movement that was exciting and fun for Hard Knocks. So, Rick, can this Brian Dable, can he run a 7.0? Not a 7.1. A 7.1 doesn't count. Can he run a 7.0 40-yard dash? I need to see this guy move first.
I want to see him move. I also think it's an interesting thought of putting wings at the end of it, because I am for that. If you told me right now, hey, Rick, you're in Washington State, we're going to put a large cheese and extra pepperoni tavern style Chicago pizza at the end of this 40-yard dash, if you can run it in less than 7 seconds, you know how fucking fast I am running that goddamn 40. I
want to see me do it again.
I'm going to be faster than what Xavier Worthy for something like that in Washington State. I am craving that. So Brian Dable saying put some wings at the end of that, I am right there with him. I don't know if he could do it. Because I don't know if I could do 7 seconds in a 40. I'm actually going to try to. I want to do that, actually. I'm going to try to clock myself at a 40. And
we should do a combine next year.
I was going to say we should do something like that. I'm going to see if I can do it this year. I'm going to look at my local football field and see how fast I can run the 40. If I can do it in 7 seconds or less, then maybe Brian Dable can. Maybe.
Well, like Bill did say, as for Dable, he looks more slim, far more slim throughout the offseason program than he has in previous years. Maybe he's gearing up to put his claim to the test during an early practice at camp, or perhaps he's preparing to participate in the next iteration of Run, Rich, Run. But regardless, this story is hilarious, and I thought it would be a fun segue into the question. If you were able to watch any of the Hard Knocks episodes yet, I haven't been able to. I don't have HBO. I'm going to try to watch it later. Pirate.
God damn it, Kyle. I love that. I'm going to try to watch it later. I haven't watched any of them, but the clips have been pretty awesome. I don't know if you saw the Saquon one. I know Bill mentioned it earlier. The front office. I don't know if Dable was there or not, but the front office talking about, or is there anybody out there who's really going to give him more than $13 million a year, or whatever the conversation was. And then the Eagles were like, bet. Yes, we will do that. So the clips have been awesome. I am going to start watching it though, because I need something to watch on HBO Max. Some of the shows I've already binged, I've already watched. So I need some football. So that seems like a really cool, kind of like inside of the GM, the front office, all that stuff. I'm going to start watching that, but I haven't seen anything, just clips. I also want to say real quick, Speaking of wings, have you guys heard of those Wendy's saucy chicken nuggets or
I have.
nuggets? They are so fucking good, dude.
Are they?
They are so good. Like I'm a guy who loves wings. Like whether it's Wingstop, whether it's like your local wing joint that is like rated one of the best in like the state or something like that. I love
Air
those
crew
wings.
wings.
Air crew wings. But those wings are actually pretty damn good, and they're not necessarily wings; they're more chicken nuggets. But they're like boneless chicken wings, but they're so damn good. The saucy nuggets at Wendy's, get those, and then get fries, and then throw them in the sauce, and then shake them up, and there you go.
Yeah. Okay, I will.
Yeah, do it.
And
what are you doing? Go do it.
I will. One thing I don't understand is when people get ranch or blue cheese for their wings. And I know this is unpopular, but
it is.
I don't understand why you are putting a flavor on the flavor. The flavor, it's not like I would understand putting ranch on the wings if the wings weren't in any type of a sauce. I'm like, I need something. But I mean, if you got saucy wings, then that's the flavor. I don't want another flavor. That's the flavor I want. Yeah. I ordered that flavor.
I get that. And for the longest time, I was like, strictly barbecue wings, no ranch, no blue cheese. I still don't like blue cheese, but getting the buffalo with the ranch, dude, fucking
buffalo's different. That's the one exception. If you get traditional buffalo, I get it.
Yeah, and that's my go-to. Like traditional buffalo with the ranch is like a game changer, because before I used to just have like the buffalo, no ranch, and some fries and some ketchup. I wouldn't dip the wings in the ketchup, just FYI. But
thank God.
Yeah, thank God.
You know what Patrick Mahomes puts ketchup on everything. He's puts ketchup on not just his eggs. He puts ketchup on things that it shouldn't be on.
They just shouldn't be on there. Even like Will Levis and mayonnaise. Like, I don't get it, dude. Like, stop being weird.
Knock it off.
Knock it the fuck off.
No, what I do with my mayonnaise though, real quick, is I do this with my pizza. I get a big scoop of mayo and I put it in like a small like a dipping jar, and then I get Texas Pete and I pour the shit out of it to where it's like 50-50 ratio, and I stir it up, and it makes this like perfect. You take a pizza and you dip it in there, and it's just so creamy, spicy. It's so good.
The Texas Pete, I agree. I love hot sauce on pizza. I don't know what it is. My wife and I do this thing where we get we call it the triple P, pepperoni, peppers, and jalapenos.
Yeah.
So I like that spice on a pizza.
Me too. I need it. I don't just like it. I need it. I go red pepper flakes. I cover it.
Yes. The red pepper flakes with the cheese. Oh my God, dude. Whew, I already ate, but I'm hungry again. But yeah, the spice on the pizza, I absolutely love it. Like, I'm Mexican, so I have to get the Valentina sauce on it. That's how I grew up with pizza.
Yeah,
like that sauce on it. That shit is fire, dude.
I got it. I got that in my fridge right now. I love that shit.
But I fucking love it. I fucking love it. And Bill, real quick, is there a Lazy Dog restaurant? No, I know. I just looked it up. I think the closest one is in Cupertino, so in Cali, but there's not one there.
You just made that up.
Totally made that up. Everything I've said up to this point, I have made up. I don't know what the Titans are. What the hell is a Titan? Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. That was a great food conversation there at the end. Foods, by the way, all those foods we mentioned, wings and pizza and fries. Football. Sunday foods.
It's right around the corner. In jalapeno poppers, it's all coming.
Yes. Fucking yes, dude. Oh my God. I think this football season, when we're streaming those like primetime games, Sunday night football, Monday night football, what have you, I think I'm gonna spoil myself a little bit. I think I'm gonna like order some pizza, the triple P. I'm gonna get some wings. You guys are gonna see me eating I think, on a lot of these broadcasts when we live stream these games. I'm
Yes.
gonna work out a lot because I've been on my grind so far these last couple weeks. But goddamn, I just love wings and pizza and fries on football.
That's my motivation for working out. I want to eat like shit.
Me too. All right, guys. Thank you guys again so much for joining. Please remember to like the stream. It helps us. We appreciate the likes. We appreciate the follows, the subscriptions, all of that. Again, memberships, super chats, all that stuff should be starting up again mid-August timeframe once we submit everything, once I'm moved into my new house. So again, just an update on that. But again, thank you guys for joining us. You can please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would be awesome. Like us on Twitch, like us on X, follow us there. Share all of our live streams, comment, everything you guys want to do. That would be awesome. And you could follow me on X at and now Rick. Kyle, where can they follow you on X? I'm going to answer that for you. You can follow him at NFL with Kyle on X. You can follow me at my YouTube page at Rick. Kyle, where can they follow you on your YouTube page? I'm going to answer that for you at Kyle Kitzman. He's doing awesome stuff with the Broncos. Some other NFL news, you guys can follow him on there. Kyle, I'm going to let you talk about the channel. Actually, no, I'm not. He's also, no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, dude.
No. Yeah. Go follow me over there. They did some really cool interviews with Bronco fans. Good stuff.
Good vibes. Again, go follow us on all our pages, YouTube, Twitch, and X.
Top 5, no debating. Top 5.
You son of a bitch. No wings.
I had to get one in.
Kyle. No wings or pizza. No wings or pizza for Kyle this season.
No.
Forbidden.
No, I'm gonna have a Mahomes jersey back here if the Broncos don't win more than 5 games.
5 games. Yeah, that's what it was. We got to keep him honest to his word, guys. We got to keep him honest to his words. Again, thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate everything. Appreciate all you guys. Bill, Nick, who else was in here? Nash was in here. And where is it? I took an oof was in here. NFC West is better. I took an oof.
I think that's
Bill,
Lil E.
Is that Lil E or E-Dub?
Name. Or E-Dub maybe?
Possibly. You got to find out.
I don't even know how to change it.
They do keep changing their stuff. But again, Nash, Nick, and Bill, thank you guys so much for joining us. Kyle, always a good time, brother.
Always a good time.
See ya.